So, my dear friends, every year at the Pesach Seder we ask, Manish Tana Halaylos and Miko Halaylos, how is this night of Pesach different than other nights the rest of the year? We don't make a statement, we ask a question, because questions challenge us. And the same type of question we should be asking about Yom Kippur this year. Manish Tana Yom Kippurim Zeh, Mikol Yomei Kippurim She'avru. How is this Yom Kippur different than all of Yom Kippurim in the past? Probably the question should have been asked last Yom Kippur as well. How is last year and this year's Yom Kippur, how is it different? And the answer is, it's profoundly different. It's dramatically different because Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, and the state of Israel are now in a state of crisis, and therefore the Yom Kippur must be different. We must experience it differently than we've experienced it in the past. The war in Gaza is not over, even though Israel has had tremendous military successes. And many of those are mamish nisim. They're literally miracles that have taken place before our eyes, and which demonstrates the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is as always, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is orchestrating whatever it takes place in the world. But there's still fighting that's taking place, and yesterday there were missiles launched into by the Houthis into Eilat, and 20 people were injured. The hostages are still, many of them are still being held prisoner in Gaza. So the battle is not over. But not only is the military battle still raging on, but there's also the battle for world opinion, where Israel is going through terrible time. Israel is, Rahmanu Litzlan, becoming a pariah state. Their PR image has suffered tremendously. And even those people in those countries who might have been, at least outwardly, supporters of the state of Israel have now turned against her. And Israel is now demonized as a perpetuator of genocide, thanks to the august bodies of the United Nations and the international criminal courts who are led by evil people. They have pronounced that Israel, in protecting themselves, have committed genocide. And this has spread throughout the world. And Israel, yes, today, Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke in the United Nations, and I was watching it online, and I saw that before he got up to speak, it appeared as if almost everybody in the room walked out on Prime Minister Netanyahu, which is a horrifying thing to happen. And even countries that we thought were, not radical, Canada, Australia, other countries of that sort, they have completely turned against the state of Israel. So Israel is in a state of crisis, and if the more Israel becomes isolated, the more dangerous it becomes for the state of Israel. So that's how this Yom Kippur is different than Yom Kippur in previous years. I think that there's a tremendously powerful lesson in Maftir Yonah that applies this year. It's a lesson that applies all the time, but in this year in particular, it's a lesson, and it teaches exactly what we need to do this Yom Kippur. The story of Yonah is that God told Yonah, he was a prophet, God said he should go to Nineveh and let the people know that the city is going to be overturned. And Yonah decides on his own that he doesn't want to go, because Chazal say because he was afraid that if they do tshuva, it will reflect poorly on Klal Yisrael. So he decided to run away from Hashem. Vayakam Yonah livroach tarshisha milifnei Hashem. How Yonah could delude himself into thinking that he could run away from Hashem is a terrific question. I'm going to leave that for another time. Maybe next year I'll talk about it. But Yonah decides that he could escape, run away from Hashem. So he gets on a boat, and Hashem hitul ruach gedol hayam. Hashem brought a powerful wind on the ocean. Vayhisar gadol, and there was a mighty tempest by Yom on the sea. Va'aniya chishva l'hishaver, and the boat was about to sink. Vayir hamalachim vayizaku ish elokav. I'm reading obviously from Sefer Yonah. The sailors were scared to death, and they were, I doubt that they were religiously inspired people, but they knew that it's life or death, so they called out to their gods. What is Yonah doing in the middle of the storm? And Yonah, by the way, he knows that the cause of the storm is because God is upset at him. He said later on, a few psukim later, Yonah tells the sailors, I know that this storm is because of me. And as I'll say, that the only place where there was a storm was by Yonah's boat. All the other boats on the sea, the waters were placid. There was no turmoil. But Yonah's boat was in crisis. So Yonah realized that Hashem brought this tempest to awaken him, to arouse him, to force him to change course. So what does Yonah do in light of this storm that's raging? The sea is churning. What does he do? Yonah Yorad El Yarkase Hasvina Vayishka Vayirdam. Yonah went down to the hold of the ship and he went to sleep. And this is like incomprehensible. First of all, how can he sleep when the other sailors, they feared for their lives and they called out to their gods? Yonah he's calm like a cucumber. This is a storm. It's about to collapse and be destroyed. How could Yonah at a time like that go to sleep? Moreover, how could you fall asleep when there's a storm? Even when the water is turbulent, to a lesser extent, you can't sleep on a boat. Yonah, was he so exhausted that he went to sleep? And then so the Navi says that he was Vayishka Vayirdam. He went to sleep, and Vayirdam means more than sleep. Vayirdam is he was in a slumber, a state of slumber. Slumber means that it's difficult to waken the person when they're in slumber. Now, there's two types of slumbers. There's one type of slumber where a person can be aroused. The Rambam says that on Rosh Hashanah the shofar is blown because Uri Yisheni Mishinaslem v'nirdamim hakitzu mitir damaslem. The shofar is an alarm clock. It's a wake-up call. So the shofar is to hakitzu mitir damaslem. You should be aroused from your slumber. The word hakitzu comes from the word kates. Kates is a thorn. So if somebody's asleep, you take a thorn and you poke them. Even if they're in a deep sleep, they're going to jump out of bed. So shofar is supposed to transform us and awaken us with its piercing call. But there's another. But so shofar, if the person listens to the shofar, it could wake them up. But there's another form of tardema that's described in the Torah that's much more profound, and that is when Adam Harishon, when God created man, and then He wanted to create Chava, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu put Adam Harishon to sleep. Vayipo alav tardema. He brought a tardema of Adam Harishon, and then He did perform surgery, and He took out the side of Yonah of Adam, and He used that to form Chava. So that was when a person it's like when a person is having surgery and they use anesthesia. When the person is anesthetized, he doesn't feel a thing. The surgeon could be slicing away with his knife and there's blood and everything. I never watched surgery, but I imagine that's what happens. So the Adam Harishon, he slept through it. He didn't feel a thing. So which type of Vayirdam is Yonah? Yonah's Vayirdam is the same as Adam Harishon's Vayirdam. Yonah is so fast asleep in such a deep slumber that he's impervious. He doesn't feel a thing. It's like defies logic. How could he be sleeping at a time like that? And the answer apparently is that you see that human nature is that a person ignores things that are unpleasant. And Yonah, in general, Yonah's running away. He was unhappy that God told him to go to Nineveh, so he's running away, which is also irrational. And then when he comes out off the boat, he's swallowed by the fish. And you would think that he would do tshuva when he's in the fish, but he doesn't. He doesn't tell Hashem, "I'm sorry, I forgive me." He doesn't. He davens Hashem should save him, but no tshuva. Even though it's miraculous that he survived in the fish, there's no oxygen in the fish, and the fish should have digested Yonah. But you see, again, Yonah, he's delusional. And then Yonah delivers his prophecy in Nineveh, and then God goes, and then the people do tshuva. So after the people do tshuva, so what does it say? Vayar el Yonah ra gedol v'yichalo. Yonah was furious. He was super angry. Vayispal el Hashem, he davened to Hashem. He says, "Ana Hashem, al rozeh dvar yad yosi al adamasi, al keiki davening levrach tashi." This is what I told you before, that they're going to do tshuva, and that's why I ran away. It's unbelievable. I mean, Yonah's a Navi. How can he make such a statement? It's like telling God, "I told you so." God said, "Go deal with the price." Yonah says, "You see, I was right, because they did tshuva. Is exactly what I didn't want." Well, audacity, the chutzpah. So Yonah is a delusional person. I have to qualify and say Yonah was a great person. So it's not for me to say that Yonah was delusional, but we're reading the story. That's what it says. He was delusional, and then afterwards, the Navi says that God brought a kikaya. God brought God said to Yonah, "I hate you. Are you really angry?" So Yonah says, "Yeah, he's very angry." And then God brought a chamsin that was very hot, and then he made a tree, a kikaya that had shade. And Yonah was so happy with the kikaya, and then God caused the sun to wither the leaves, and then there's no more shade. So God says to Yonah, "I hate the Are you super angry about the kikaya?" And Yonah said, "Yes, hate the I'm angry to death. That's how angry I am." So God says to him, "You're upset about a kikayim that you didn't invest in. I invested in these people. I created 120,000 souls, and they don't know between the right and the left side. And I shouldn't be upset that the people are going to die. That is why I wanted you to deliver a message that they should do tshuva." What's Yonah's response after God tells him this? There's no response. It's unbelievable. God is giving him musar, and it's silent. The Megillah ends abruptly. Why is that? It's because Yonah doesn't answer. He still doesn't get it, even after God explains it to him why God wanted him to go to Nineveh. There's no response from Yonah. So there's a pattern here that Yonah is delusional and he's in denial. So when he goes into the hold of the ship, Yonah is in denial. That he's not worried about the storm, and he's not worried about dying, and he's not worried about God being angry. He blocks all that out of his mind, and therefore he can fall asleep like a baby, and into a deep slumber where the storm is not bothering him. So, but what happens? The Rav HaChovel, the captain of the ship, comes to Yonah and says, "Ma'alecha nirdam." He yells at him. How? And Ma'alecha doesn't mean why are you sleeping. It means how is it conceivable? What's going on? How is it possible? And he says to him, "Kum kra elokecha." Wake up and call out to your God. We're in a state of danger. There's a crisis. You got to call out to your God. Maybe God will listen, and we won't be lost. And that call is, to me, that's the most powerful line in Sefer Yonah. Every year it stirs me that the captain says to Yonah, "Kura ela elokecha." You should call, Ma'alecha nirdam. How can you be sleeping at a time like this? Call out to your God. There's a story that I've told before about the Geri Rebbe Yitzchak Meir. When he was a young man, his Rebbe, the Rabbunim from Bar Shishcha, sent him to meet the Kotzker Rebbe. The Kotzker Rebbe, Menachem Mendel Kotz, was a brilliant person, but he was very piercing with the words that he used. The Chassidim, when he give Musar, they used to jump out of the window. So the Kotzker, the Gera Rebbe, Rabbi Yitzchak Meir, came to the Kotzker Rebbe, and he wanted, the Kotzker Rebbe was going, he thought the Kotzker Rebbe would faher him, he would test him to see how much he knows, and he had a reputation he was a brilliant Talmud Chacham. He wrote a sefer called Chidush Yarim. So he thought the Rebbe was going to ask him questions and see if he could answer them. So the Rebbe said, "Do you know the answer to the kasha of the Rav HaChovel? Do you know the answer to the question asked by the Rav HaChovel?" So the Ger Rebbe thought, Rav HaChovel, there must be some famous Rosh Hashiva or a Rav HaChovel. Maybe he's the Rav of the city Chovel, or maybe he wrote a sefer called Rav HaChovel. So he says, "I'm not familiar. I don't know the answer because I don't even know what the question is." So the Rebbe looked at him with his piercing eyes and he says, "The question of Rav HaChovel is that the Rav HaChovel is the captain of the ship who says, Ma'alecha nirdam." That's the kasha. You have to hear the kasha also. Every human being should be asking that kasha, Ma'alecha nirdam, because everybody to some extent is sleeping. and therefore and if you don't have an answer to that question, the Kutzke was telling the Ger Rebbe, then you have to think about it and ponder and transform yourself, so you should be able to answer the kasha of Maluch HaNirdam. How are you sleeping? So I would say that the modern Maluch HaNirdam, the modern application of that normal every Yom Kippur, Maluch HaNirdam means we have to do tshuva. We have to correct our ways. We're asleep. We get into a pattern of behavior and we think we can't change. There's nothing we can do about it. Maluch HaNirdam calls out from the Maftir Yonah. We can hear the Rabbi Chova, and the ultimate Rabbi Chova is Rebbeinu Shalom. He's the captain of the world, and he's calling to every single one of us. Says Maluch HaNirdam. But this year it takes on a different meaning, or another additional meaning, and that is the Rebbeinu Shalom saying to us, there's a storm going on. The waters are raging. There's a sar gadol. There's a tempest, and the ruach gadol, and there's turbulent winds, and the water is churning, and the whole world is ostracizing the state of Israel, who's done nothing wrong, and it's one of the tiniest places tiniest states in the world that the whole world has ganged up against the Jewish people. So it's a crisis. There's a storm. So if a person is not moved on Yom Kippur to daven with passion and with feeling and with tremendous kavanah, so then God's going to say to us, the Rav HaChovel himself will say, Maluch HaNirdam, how in the world is it possible you're sleeping at a time like this? Kum kara elkecha, you have to call out to the Rebbeinu Shalom. And it's a tremendous mistake that we make to think, number one, we think, what could be done? We saw all the Nisim. What could be done with Iran? They have a nuclear program. God took care of it. He blew it up through the United States and through Israel. But he blew it up. And the walkie-talkies and the Hezbollah, all the things that have happened in these past 2 years, all the Nisim. God could change the whole world in a second. So to think that there's nothing that could change, that's ridiculous. But also a person thinks, who am I? I'm just a plain Jew. What difference does it make what I do? And that's not true. Everybody, a person who davens with feeling and with kavanah could change the world. You know the famous story with the Baal Shem Tov. There was a boy, a shepherd, who came to shul and he didn't know how to daven, and he stood in the back of the shul and he saw everybody davening. He said the only thing he knew how to do was to whistle. So he started whistling, and the Hasidim was so angry, whistling in shul, and it was on Yom Kippur. And then the Baal Shem Tov says, leave him alone, because he's whistling with such feeling. There was a decree that was supposed to be levied against the Jewish people. His whistling tore up that decree. So there's no such thing that I can't do anything. That's part of a state of nirdam. If you think that you're impotent, then that shows that you're nirdam, that you're in a deep slumber, and then nothing can wake you up, and you could sleep in the middle of the storm because you're delusional. So that is the powerful message of Maftir Yonah. Don't be delusional. Don't be in a state of denial. Don't think that I am impotent and there's nothing I can do. And don't think that the Rebbeinu Shalom can't change it. And every single word of the davening on Yom Kippur, that should be on our minds. And in Mirza Hashem, if we daven together with all Klal Yisrael, we're much stronger than all the nations of the world together, and the United Nations and everybody with all their missiles and everything. When you have they have their horses and their missiles and their bombs, but we have the Rebbeinu Shalom, and all we need to do is call out to the Rebbeinu Shalom with tremendous feeling and tremendous kavanah. Mirza Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should listen to our tefillos. The hostages should be released immediately. The war should come to an end. There should be shalom for Klal Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael and for the Jewish people throughout the entire world. Thank you for listening, and have a good Shabbos.